Okay, so for this particular video, we are going to be looking at the skeletal muscles. So the first part of this video is just going to be looking at the structure of the skeletal muscles, the important organelles and such. Now, skeletal muscles are just muscles attached to our bones. Examples of skeletal muscles that you might have heard of will be things like your biceps, your triceps, your quadriceps, and so many other types of muscles. As long as they're attached to the bone and you have control over it, which means to say, if I tell you, okay, move that part of your body, and if you can voluntarily move it, that usually is a skeletal muscle. Smooth muscles are usually muscles that you don't have control over, like the muscles of your intestine, your arteries, or the muscles in your veins. And cardiac muscles are obviously muscles in the heart. We've talked about this in chapter 9, chapter 9 in AS. So before we talk about skeletal muscles, we kind of have to understand that skeletal muscles are referred to as tissues as well. And the reason why they're called tissues is because they're made out of cells. We know this. All right, here's where it becomes a little bit confusing. Typically, when you draw out an animal cell, just a normal animal cell in your body, like a liver cell or a white blood cell for that matter, most of the time the cell will have, something referred to as, they would have like a cell surface membrane, cytoplasm, and typically they have one nucleus. And most cells in your body will have a limited length and width. Now, I put the bracket over there for their limited length and width as 40 micrometers. That's kind of like the average in a way. Some cells in your body can be 7 micrometers, like your red blood cells. Some cells can be slightly larger, some cells can be slightly smaller than 40 micrometers. You don't have to memorize this. But what I'm just trying to tell you is most times in our body, our cells have these features. They have one cell surface membrane, one nucleus, one cytoplasm, and a limited length and width. Now, the reason why I bring this up is because skeletal muscle cells, and if you notice, I put the quotation mark cells, they don't really behave like cells. Now, what do I mean by that is, under normal circumstances, one skeletal muscle cell can be extremely long. They can be 2 to 3 centimeters long. To convert that into micrometer, a single skeletal muscle cell can be 20,000 to 30,000 micrometers. Now you might be thinking, hey, wait a second, doesn't that defy the total surface area to volume ratio? They are able to do so because they're quite flat. Okay, and see, typically cells are not supposed to be that long, but a skeletal muscle cell is able to defy that. Now, another very weird thing is, within that one skeletal muscle cell, it can have multiple nuclei. And I don't mean just having 2 nuclei. They can have up to thousands of nuclei within that one cell. So that is why, if you see in certain textbooks, they may refer to the skeletal muscle cell as a syncytium. Now, you don't have to memorize that word syncytium, it's okay. But you have to know that we do not usually refer to the skeletal muscle as a cell. It's kind of weird to call it a cell. So instead, what we use is we just call it a skeletal muscle fiber. Just know that when we use the word skeletal muscle fiber, it is at the same level as the cell. Now, just like any other cells, they must have a cell surface membrane. They must also have a cytoplasm. But because they don't behave like cells, we give them different names. The cell surface membrane of the skeletal muscle is referred to as something called as a sarcolemma, and the cytoplasm of the skeletal muscle is referred to as something called as the sarcoplasm. Now, the word sarco is derived from the Greek language, which means flesh. So, do you have to know the term sarcoplasm and sarcolemma? Yes. In the exam, if they do ask you to label it, you can call it cytoplasm and you can call it the cell surface membrane. It is allowed, but sometimes they may throw those words out at you in paper 4. They might use the word sarcolemma and sarcoplasm, so you need to know what they're referring to. So what I'm going to do here is, I'm going to be drawing out a bone. Okay, because skeletal muscles are attached to the bones anyway, and I'm going to draw out a tendon. You don't have to memorize what's the meaning of a tendon, but just as a general knowledge, a tendon is just a particular structure that attaches the skeletal muscles to your bones. Okay, those of you who do sports or follow sports related content, you might know a lot about this. Especially when athletes have tendon related injuries, you know that that's quite serious. Anyway, moving on. So then I'm just drawing out the skeletal muscle, and I'm going to cut the skeletal muscle so you can see the section within it, as you can see over there. Now that's the section of the skeletal muscle which is made up of a few bundles. Now you don't have to memorize that part, but I'm just pulling out one of that bundle, and those bundles are still visible under the naked eye. But if we zoom into the bundle, you'll see that those bundles have those tiny little dots. And if I were to pull that tiny little dot out, it's actually a line, by the way. It's like a single fiber. That fiber is the one muscle fiber, which is technically the cell that we talked about earlier. Okay, that is why the muscle fiber or the muscle cell can be extremely long. So what I'm going to do is, from that muscle fiber, I'm going to magnify that part. So what I'm doing is I'm magnifying it and I'm zooming in to see what's inside there. First and foremost, the muscle fiber contains sarcolemma, which is the cell surface membrane, and they also have the sarcoplasm, which is the cytoplasm, and I've highlighted that in blue. And I also told you earlier, about a few minutes ago, the muscle fiber is weird in the sense that within that one structure, it can actually have multiple nuclei. So as you can see here, I'm just drawing out 3 nuclei, and I'm drawing out a few mitochondria, because obviously your muscles need mitochondria because they need to generate ATP for your muscles to contract. Now, the other thing that I'm also going to draw out over here is I want you to see these very weird elongated structures that a way to describe them, I guess, is like they are like these strips, or they are like this tube-like structure, and they are made out of areas where it's dark and light. All right, so you can see like a darker region which I've colored in like a darker orange color, and of course the lighter region which I've colored in a lighter orange color, I guess. I think that's orange. Yeah, that is orange. Looks beige, but looks orange too. Anyway, yeah, this is always going to be a common recurring theme in this channel. Are those the actual colors? What are those colors exactly? I don't think I'm colorblind, but I don't know. Anyway, so now I want you to understand. Now you don't have to go into the detail of this structure yet, but the muscle, within the muscle, they actually have a few of these structures, not just one tube like that. I'm drawing out 3 of that tube-like structures, and those things are called the myofibril. I will talk about the myofibril in the next video, because the myofibril is one of the most important parts anyway. So they have a special video dedicated just for that. Now, if we were to just zoom in on the cell surface membrane or the sarcolemma, we notice that certain parts of the cell surface membrane will fold inwards, but not completely. They just fold inwards slightly. And I'm just drawing in no, this is not cytokinesis, okay? But yeah, the cell surface membrane folds inwards, and every part where it folds inwards are referred to as something called T-tubules or transverse tubules. Yeah, stay with me. This is only the starting. It's only going to get worse, okay? At least let's be honest with ourselves, right? So yeah, the T-tubules are just the infoldings of the sarcolemma. They are made out of cell membrane, by the way, and the T-tubules are connected to these weird structures which I'm drawing in green, and those structures are referred to as something called sarcoplasmic reticulum, not endoplasmic reticulum. Technically it does look like an endoplasmic reticulum, but because it's inside the muscle fiber, we give it a different name. We call it the sarcoplasmic reticulum, and unlike the smooth ER and the rough ER, they also have a slightly different function. We will talk about the function later. So this is a generalized structure of the muscle fiber. You can see the sarcolemma, sarcoplasm, the mitochondria nucleus, those you understand. The new structures that you have to know are the T-tubules, sarcoplasmic reticulum, and the myofibril. Okay. Now, some students are still like, look, I still don't understand that T-tubule. Can you elaborate on that further? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take out the muscle fiber here, and I'm going to delete out all the other structures because I just want to focus on the sarcolemma, T-tubule, and also the sarcoplasmic reticulum only. Okay, so I've deleted the myofibrils and such. So what I'm doing here is I'm drawing out the phospholipid bilayer. We're just zooming in, and that is the cell surface membrane or the sarcolemma, right? And the sarcolemma, where it folds inwards, that structure forms the T-tubule. That's what it means by infolding. That's all it is. And of course, the T-tubule is also connected to the sarcoplasmic reticulum. All those are membranes. And of course, the blue color parts where I'm highlighting in blue are the sarcoplasm. Now, there are a few important points that I want you to know. All right. The first important thing I want you to know is the sarcolemma is connected to the T-tubule, which is connected to the sarcoplasmic reticulum through a network of membranes. The reason why this is important to understand now is because when we study the contraction of the muscles, this part is going to be repeated again. The second important thing I also want you to know is within the sarcoplasmic reticulum, in the cisternae, which is the container, the space within the reticulum, it contains calcium ions, and along the membrane of the sarcoplasmic reticulum, those purple colored bits that you can see there, those are calcium ion channels. So the sarcoplasmic reticulum contains calcium ions within the cisternae, and it also contains calcium ion channels on its membrane. Now, again, you might be thinking, why is this important? I know that I'm info dumping. Info dumping just basically means I'm just basically force feeding you with a lot of information. But just like I do with most of my videos, everything will be connected together. I promise. Okay, so just understand the structure of the skeletal muscle cell or the skeletal muscle fiber, however you want to call it. This is just the generalized structure that we just have to know first. All right.